Welcome to the very first lesson of the history of nothing. And this course is something that I'm really excited to share with you all. And in many ways, just like the best projects, it feels like it's been something I've been working on for a really long time. And so as I've been putting it together for you, it's been a delight to turn toward really some of my favorite texts and teachings in order to create this experience where hopefully you can encounter your own nothingness. And through encountering our nothingness, as I hope in today's lesson especially, I'll be able to impart by connecting to and through our own nothingness, we experience our everythingness. We experience the way that we are related to all things. We come to experience our somethingness, the fact that each of us has a unique place within this bigger universe, and that this unique place is its own honor and privilege. And so really it's a course on nothing, everything, and something. And I wanted to right away start with a verse from a text that we're going to go deeper into when we get to the lesson on Taoism. But I just thought it was a great little intro and almost a sort of benediction as we start the lesson. At the end of this lesson will be the opportunity to participate in a little, very short ritual and prayer that I learned from my shamanic teacher from the Quiero lineage of the high Andes of Peru. And in between, I'm just going to be sharing with you a little bit about the course and kind of where we're headed, why we're doing it, why it matters, how you are going to participate in it yourself, how that's going to work. And then, of course, a little bit about the particular topic for today, for this week, which is Indigenous and Shamanic spiritual traditions, and how looking at this unit prepares us really beautifully for moving into the texts and the spaces and the cultures that we're going to encounter in a way that's respectful and in a way that will hopefully yield a kind of relationship with what we're studying that allows us to be changed, transformed, informed in a way that actually changes our daily lives. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to be giving you guys all of these texts in a nice organized way on the site, so you don't have to worry about that while you're listening to the lecture. Some people might choose to follow along with what texts you have, but just listening and absorbing is plenty, and know that you can always come back around and dig deeper. Just take what you can out of it as we go. All right, the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu, verse 1. This is how the book begins. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet, mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness the gateway to all understanding. So in that short little poem are contained a lot of the themes, these really deep themes that we're going to be working with. And you'll see some very similar language in the texts ahead, and even in this prayer that we're going to do at the end today. But I wanted to begin with this, first of all, because one of the main gifts of the nothing, one of the reasons why it's such an important central concept to all of these enlightenment teachings and healing teachings, is because in order to go on a journey of awakening, in order to have the experience of a new insight, right? We have to be able to inhabit our not knowing. We have to learn how to be comfortable as not the one who knows. Because the clinging to the knowing that we already have becomes the obstacle to receiving. Right? Oh, I know this, I know this. It becomes the obstacle to receiving something new. The unnameable is the eternally real, the eternal Tao. And we'll talk more about what the significance of the Tao is, but essentially you could just plug in for Tao, the universe, or God. Play with that and see how that works for you. But what he's speaking of is, naming is the origin of particular things, okay? And this is something that we'll refer to throughout as the somethingness. When we get to Buddhism, we'll read a text that talks about it as form, as the stuff, as the kind of things, the thingness of life. And, of course, this is also kind of a funny way to start, a course where for the next 9 weeks, we're going to be talking a lot, and I'm going to be asking you to listen to ideas and then share in discussion, to read words and respond with words. Kind of funny thing to do, considering, it says right here, and we'll see more of this as we go, you can't name it. Or you can name it and you can talk about it, but we have to keep coming back to the recognition that the experience of the nothing, the experience of what we see here is tied to God, the eternal, the everlasting, the unchanging, the ever present. That which is that huge, that real, that immanent, that transcendent, that darn paradoxical, right? I'm using words that might seem like, how could they even go together? That this is the nothingness. And it will always squirm away from us trying to trap it with names, us trying to accumulate it like it's, as we do with, you could be a hoarder of material things, but I myself have been guilty, not so much of hoarding material things. I haven't had much of that to hoard, but knowledge I have. I've kind of gotten proud of my knowledge, and again, letting my knowledge become an obstacle to being present for what is. So all of these texts that we're going to be going through are all, they all have a lot in common in that they, in some way or another, are going to talk about these really important themes of the nothing, the something, and the everything. They are also all common in that they all are either used in practice or are talking about how to do practice. So these texts really resist being just intellectual. They're not just philosophy. None of them are. They all resist just being ideas. They resist keeping us in this world of naming. Because what we realize is that the mind will not, cannot, on its own, fully grasp the nothingness or the everythingness. It might do an okay job at the somethingness, as we'll find, right? But the mind alone is not going to be able to get us there. And so the practices that we do are so essential. And every single one of these texts that we're going to be talking about is in some way or another telling you, okay, now experience it, live it. And so I really, really respect these texts. I really trust them, and I really trust the teachers that teach them. They, again, will find that a lot of the authors of these texts are unknown, or what we know about them is really at this point just lore. Because none of them lend themselves, none of them, sorry, I just gotta, the audio is weird. Okay, good. Oh, you know what you were hearing? That was a train. There's a train that goes by, and yeah, if other people have said that before, it sounds like music. Yeah, sorry about that. They will not, we're going to find over and over again, they're not doing this, right? These teachers did not do all of this for just their own sake. They are helping us. They are trying to wake us up and give us maps to healing. And they tend to have this in common, that they are not so interested in hoarding, right? Knowledge or fame or power or wealth. And so working with these texts, I find, for me personally, and I hope to impart this to you as well, keeps us humble. It keeps us honest. It keeps us returning again and again to walking the walk, to actually living our lives in an enlightened and healthy way. And it helps us avoid pitfalls that exist in every area of life, and absolutely certainly in spiritual practice, the pitfalls of the ego. Obviously, there are lots of differences between these as well. And I'm gonna give you, these talks aren't crazy long, and I've got a lot that I want us to cover, and I don't want to overwhelm. But I will also do my best to give a little bit of the sort of cultural and historical context around things, so that we get a sense of the somethingness of each of these teachers. They're all trying to teach this unnameable, and yet they are using specific languages. They are referring to specific sort of cultural stories and beliefs. And so they're always in this context of a somethingness. And our capacity as meditators, our ability to sort of step back and see that bigger picture, to not be too attached or kind of inside of our own cultural standpoint as much as we can, is going to lend itself really, really greatly to us seeing the continuity and the unity among all of these texts, while also respecting and honoring and appreciating these distinct cultural contexts. Okay. It always goes so fast. So everyone who is gathered here live, I know and love. But there are different audiences that may be watching this. I'm going to just speak to break the audience down into three audiences here in a moment. Yeah, but for those who are totally new, okay, so for you, welcome. I hope that you get something out of this talk. I hope that you get something out of the practices that I'm sharing here, and that you might want to join the course. For you, just a little bit about me and what I'm doing here. I have been facilitating healing and awakening practices for the last decade or so, and I really bring a few different aspects of myself to this that collaborate. One is I am a teacher. I facilitate learning. I called it earlier awakening, right? Having a new realization, having an insight, having an experience of a new kind of awareness and a new way of looking at the world. And so I use my own understanding and my own deep study and my ability to communicate to hopefully help you access some of these teachings in a way that perhaps somebody who was a less skillful teacher wouldn't do as good of a job with. I give you lots of little inquiry questions at the end of the talks and to go along with the readings so that you can have your own learning experience. So what I do as a teacher is not like give you information. I don't like shove things into your knowledge account. And certainly what I share in this course is not going to be exhaustive in terms of this topic. I'm not probably the best expert even on it, but I am going to offer it in a way that brings all of my own excitement about the subject to the table and brings you lots of opportunities to frame things and to question things yourself and to articulate on your own, in your own words, so that you are able to really, really grasp and have some deep insights. And that's your experience, right? So I'm here to facilitate that kind of experience. I am also a trained healer and also an innate and natural one. I actually think we all are in our own ways, but I have deeply studied the healing process. I've done a lot of trauma-informed study and training. I am very familiar with holding space for somebody going through the healing process. And yet again, notice this is something that is not something I do for others. It's that I really create an environment, a container that is a safe space and a lovingly guided space for healing to take place, if that's something that you came here for. And even if you didn't explicitly come here for healing for yourself, the awakening process, the learning process, I actually consider a kind of healing process. And the same principles apply. We have to be in a safe environment in order to let go, to stop clinging, and to let in the new information or the new experience of integration or health. I am a what I sometimes call a connector. I'm a facilitator of community spaces and community discussions. And again, here we are. It's the same thing. I'm not giving anything. I'm actually kind of backing off and creating a space where community connections can happen here. I really hope that that the folks involved raise their voices in discussion, in the discussion groups and in the comments, etc. But I'm going to continue along the way to bring out the wisdom of the community and do my best to facilitate that kind of interaction where you are seen and heard, not just by me, but by others. And then finally, I'm an artist. I grew up as a performer. I am a writer. I and this is relevant for lots of reasons. It really does come into play with all of this. Guess what's like the awakening process or the learning process and the healing process, the creative process. This is also really a creative process that I'm inviting you to collaborate with me on. And we'll find with all of these awakening, healing, and creating or manifesting works of art or writing your own books or whatever it is that, however it is that you are creative, we will find that there are spaces and practices that are conducive to that kind of free flow of natural and intuitive resource. And so if you're new, welcome to me, welcome to Nowhere Village. And I invite you to participate in these sacred processes with us. And trust is built over time slowly. So I hope that you hang around long enough to build a little bit of trust and have some of those experiences. For those of you who have been involved with Nowhere Village or have been supporting me and been kind of on the sidelines, I'm really excited if this course has kind of brought you a little bit more into the fold and a little bit more active in the space. That's exactly why I like to do these courses. It's really helpful to have a beginning, middle, and end to an experience to know, okay, well, by December 15th, I can kind of go back to giving more time to other things. And so I really am glad you're here, and I implore you to really make that commitment and to really dive into this work for this time. It's a great opportunity, and especially in these first couple weeks as you get settled into your practice and as you get kind of used to whatever you need to get used to, please lean on me, reach out to me in order to make sure that you get off to a good start and that you have everything that you need. And then once we get, a few weeks in, I find people in the course tend to kind of, those that got hooked in enough, right, just kind of it becomes a rhythm, and that suddenly you've got the time and the energy to do everything you need to do with this and live the rest of your life. And final message is for those who have been here, who've been here a lot in these last months, last couple of years. Nowhere Village started almost exactly 2 years ago. And some of you, of course, have been studying with me for much longer than that and been at retreats and previous courses before I had this community space. To those of you who have been showing up regularly and sharing of yourselves, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I have a special invitation for you for this course as well. I have to say, I see all of you as my collaborators, as my family. In a way, you're sort of co-teachers of this course. It was inspired by John Samuel, who's here asking about a Jewish prayer from his tradition, and how it spoke of nothingness. And he said, well, what's this connection? What is the... And that inspired this whole thing. It's really always been a collaboration, and I feel so lucky to have such incredible collaborators. And so I invite you, my invitation for you is to use this time and space, the beginning, middle, and end of this course, to dive really in for yourselves, and to see yourselves as collaborators in this, and to see yourself as kind of assistance to me in space holding and facilitating. Some of you actually lead meditations during the week or facilitate silent ones, you know. So you're literally space holding, but take pride in the fact that this is your space, and that people are here arriving into a community, and that's so much of what makes it special is you. And so feel empowered, take some pride, and for everyone, all of these audiences, know that everyone will have their own experience. Everyone will have certain things that really they take from this or interact with, and others that they leave, and that's totally fine. You'll also find there will be weeks where you're more involved and engaged, and there will be weeks perhaps where you're not. That's all okay. This is a space that you can always return to. This is a space that loves your presence and your commitment, and also totally understands when life pulls you away. But we aim to be a space that you continue to want to return to and call home. Okay, so we are going to go through all of these wonderful texts while we're here together. I'm going to be encouraging you also to, if you have any relevant texts or quotes or resources that you want to share along the way, there will be invitation and space for you to do that as well. We're going to do a discussion group, which I'll send a little poll out to those who are enrolled to figure out when is the best time for a discussion group. There might be 2, if that makes sense. But of course, most of the work that you're going to be doing happens at home, on your own, in your own body, in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own practice. And this very first week, I want to invite you back into your embodied space, back into your own inner experience. Just keep returning to that. Keep returning to the somethingness that is happening right here and now. I recommend everyone who's involved do a little bit of meditation every single day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. The text that I share, the talks, all of that, you should be able to do, an hour or 2 a week or something like that, all told. Maybe some will put more into it. But that steady, regular practice is going to be really, important and helpful. We want to directly experience the nothing, the everything, and the something. And it does start here and now in our own bodies. It does start with our own little rituals and how we move through our day. So, with not as much time as of course I want to give to it, here we are in the topic of today, which is shamanic and indigenous traditions. What a huge umbrella. It's huge and vast, but I begin here not just because it's historically primary to what we're doing, but also because I believe, and here is one of my theses. So throughout this, I'm going to be offering you these little theses, these little ideas, these things I believe. And I absolutely ask that you contemplate it for yourself, inquire around it. And if you disagree, beautiful, let's discuss, and maybe I'll learn something. But I believe that these nothingness teachings that we're going to find through all these other traditions are ultimately indigenous. And by that, I should tell you what I mean and what I don't mean. What I mean is that they are inherent to the human experience, the universal human experience. So I believe that this nothingness teaching, it's not like, oh, the Buddha figured it out and then it somehow got into Judaism, right? Something like that. Could be a story of causation of where the nothingness ideas came from, right? And there's certain things that we can trace that way, certain ideas that we can. I say this is not one of those ideas. I say that, in fact, any being who gives themselves over to the processes that we're here for, the awakening process, or the enlightenment process, as I sometimes call it, the healing process, or the creative process, whatever that you give yourself over to, however you do it, and there's so many different kinds of practices that can yield this experience of nothingness, you will find it on your own. You don't actually need, got this big old stack of books over here, that I'm drawing on as I'm planning this course. And I believe that I could just discover what all of these beautiful texts say on my own, because I am indigenous, because I am human, because I am a human being who belongs to this planet, who belongs to this experience. I have the capacity to reach it on my own. Now, of course, there is a distinction between we are all indigenous, we all belong to the planet, and when we speak about indigenous cultures, which really, of course, what we mean with that is a culture that is existing in ways that are very similar to, resonant, that are on a spectrum with the way that these cultures were existing before this global colonial capitalist white supremacist patriarchal culture began to dominate and take over. And these, and I put it with shamanic. So shamanic is also an umbrella term. And shamanic, basically, any shamanic spiritual practice is going to be a nature-based spiritual practice. And all the shamanic practices have indigenous roots. A shamanic practice is also going to be marked by this other theme of ours, which is direct experience. A shamanic practice is meant to allow you to have the conversation with God, rather than somebody else having it for you and then translating it for you and then letting you know, oh, this is what God is and what they want from you. A shamanic experience or a shamanic guide is somebody who is going to be facilitating the space for you to have the experience on your own. And so distinguishing, though, indigenous cultures and indigenous spiritual practices and indigenous teachings is important. And again, I'm not here to do like a whole survey of these. Gosh, that would take longer than the whole time we have in this course. It would be fascinating, I'm sure. But instead, I'm offering you guys a really simple reading from a contemporary indigenous voice. Her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I just offered you the first essay from Braining Sweetgrass of hers. And at the end of this, shortly, as we close this, I'm also going to be sharing with you a prayer that I learned from a teacher that I have studied shamanic practices with for many years. And what I would love for you to do is, as we will with every week, look at these texts, really contemplate for yourself, notice what questions arise, and do some inquiry on your own around that. Be willing to kind of compare other things that remind you of it, and do that work with the text. I also would like to invite you to just consider the fact that there are many of these extant cultures, not as many as I would like, but these cultures and traditions are alive and well and kicking. There are voices that are so wise and incredible from these different indigenous traditions that still have something to say, and I believe that these are voices that absolutely must be listened to, if we're going to get ourselves out of all these pickles that this more dominant culture has gotten us into. Though I have studied shamanic traditions for a long time, I don't identify as an indigenous person, and I don't claim to be, but I will lovingly sort of direct you back toward those voices that are present, and share with you what I know. Okay, so this text itself, I'm going to give you guys some inquiry that goes with it. I was going to talk us through it more, but time. I'm going to give you guys some inquiry questions that go along with it. But what I want you to notice is Robin Wall Kimmerer, she offers this creation story of the sky woman who falls down to the earth, and all these animals help her, and then she creates Turtle Island, and creates the first, and it plants the first plant seeds, and then she compares it to what the creation story, these other creation stories that we might be carrying around. She points out how our cultural beliefs, which are often invisible to us, actually do really direct how we relate to each other and to our land. And are the stories, the inner stories that we're telling ourselves, or that we believe, stories about reciprocity, interdependence, care, collaboration, gratitude? And if not, what impact does it have, these cultural stories that we carry around? And so this gives us a really helpful way to begin the journey, to be thinking about, in our modern world, what does it mean what does it mean to belong to a culture with its stories? How does that affect the way that we perceive others? And an invitation to return to some of this indigenous way of thinking, which, as I said again, actually is going to resonate through all of the different traditions that we go through. And something that she points out that is really, really important. She's a biology teacher, and she points out that her students, she asks in this survey, if they were to rate their knowledge of positive interactions between people and land, the median response was none. People are bad for the land, right? That's part of the story. There's this sort of self-loathing that can go along with where we are in history. And I want you to be able to look at that. If there is a sense that I am bad for the world, how does that sort of putting the shadow and the enemy inside of oneself, how does that affect oneself? And how do we experience for ourselves what it feels like to be in reciprocity. What does it feel like when we feel like we are receiving something and it's so precious and that we are able to give back? This week, please do what you can to get reconnected to nature, to the natural rhythms and cycles. At the beginning of all of this, you're going to want to be, again, creating a little meditation ritual for yourself. In this essay, she says the elders say that ceremony is how we remember to remember. And so I'd love for you to be creating your own little ceremonies. I want you to be noticing how what we're doing is syncing up, and how you're doing your daily and weekly rituals is syncing up to the rhythms of nature, to the cycles of night and day and season. I want you to be aware that you belong here. You belong here. You are part of the earth. You actually are part of the earth. And thus you are absolutely deserving of its gifts, and you are necessary to its healing. And so with all of these traditions, we're going to be really respectful of what we are bringing into the space. And we're going to try to tread lightly and not bring too much of our cultural conditioning and too much of our knowledge right in with us, so that we can learn from the different spaces that we enter. And also, we are going to continue to seek again and again the ways in which we do already belong, the ways in which we are actually all speaking about the same things, the ways in which we actually are all caring about the same things. And so these cultural differences and these contextual differences and these times in history that we find ourselves in don't ultimately sow an experience of separateness. And this is the last thing I'll say before we do this little prayer. Oh, the lessons of the nothing are also the lessons of togetherness, of belonging, of interconnectedness. The nothing is the part of you that is everywhere, that has always been. There's no borders to it. There's no expiration date on it. It is the part of you that is and always has been just present, unchangeable, unbreakable. And I have the same as you. And the Buddha, and Jesus, and Robin Wall Kimmerer, and the plants, right? And the animals. She talks about our relationships with other species and how important that is. I mean, she's I think I called her a biologist. She's a botanist. She's a plant person, and at the end of this essay, implores us to spend more time listening to plants and other creatures in the natural world and learning how to hear them. The nothingness of the plant is the same as yours. The nothingness of the bumblebee, the nothingness of the sun and the moon. And so we will continue to notice the somethingness, the differences, and we're going to continue to notice the sameness. Everything is different, everything changes, but nothing stays the same. So if you would like to join me in this This is called the Prayer for Opening Sacred Space. Many of you have done this with me before. Auspicious way to mark a new occasion. I also just do it every full moon and new moon, and it is the full moon here in a couple hours. Today is the full moon. I don't think it needs any more introduction than that. I learned it from my teacher, Liz Seidel, from the Quiero lineage of the high Andes of Peru. You will hear the sound of my rattle, which my teacher gave me. And in the end, we're just going to take a moment. There's going to be a quiet moment where you are just going to check in. We're going to put our hands on our hearts. You're going to check in and feel into yourself and let any gratitude that's arising swell. And then if it feels appropriate, set an intention for the rest of this course from now until mid-December. All right, I'll guide you through. You'll see I'm going to get up and I'm going to face different directions. You could face them with me. You could hold up one hand as I do. If you can figure out where south is, we're going to go south, west, north, east. We're going to go down to the earth, up to the sky, and then to the heart. Holding up one hand as we face the south. To the winds of the south, great serpent, wrap your coils of light around us. Teach us to shed the past the way you shed your skin, to move lightly on the earth. To the winds of the west, Mother Jaguar, protect this medicine space. Teach us the way of peace, to live impeccably. Show us the way beyond death. To the winds of the north, hummingbird, grandmothers, grandfathers, ancient ones, come warm your hands by our fire. Whisper to us on the wind. We honor you who have come before us, and you who will come after us, our children's children. Amen. To the winds of the east, great eagle, condor, come to us from the place of the rising sun. Take us under your wing and show us the mountains we dared only dream of. Teach us to fly wing to wing with the Great Spirit. Mother Earth, we are here for the healing of all your children. Stone people, mushroom people, plant people, two-legged, four-legged, creepy crawlers, the fin, the furred, and the winged ones, all our relations. The Father, Son, Grandmother Moon, to the star nations, and to you, known by 1,000 names and yet unnameable, to the Great Spirit, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just take a moment to feel yourself. Rooted into earth, head holding up heaven. Grateful for everything that brought us to this moment. How will you honor your sacred gifts and your sacred responsibilities today? How will you honor them through your practices? How will you honor them in the way that you relate to the parts of yourself and to other beings?